seen from that group so far? I guess specifically with Devin, how different is he now than where he was at this point last year?
Well, anytime you have a year in the program, you're further along in your development, your maturity, on and off the field, understanding of concepts, your skill set, your techniques. I think that's where he is, and he also got some significant playing time last year, so that's good. Gives him a reference point going into the next year. But now he's into a different role. He's fighting for a starting position, and that takes it takes more. And so he has to understand that part. You got to bring it every play. Not a freshman anymore, but we've seen good progress there. But in terms of the group in general, it's very competitive, and they know they're all fighting for playing time. So I think when you look from the guys who are returning, Jermaine, Devin, and the guys, and then you have the guys who came in through the transfer portal, and then you have the young guys. You got Jay and Jordan, and so all of those guys are very, very competitive. So they're all fighting for playing time. The good news is I think we'll have some depth there, but some guys got to step up and be the starter and produce at a high level, and that's what the challenge is. About halfway through the spring.
Don, right? What's the biggest difference you're seeing with Julian Sand from this time a year ago to where you are now, and what's he doing best? What's he needing to get better at?
Well, I think the first thing is just command of the whole operation, understanding that he's the guy that's in charge. We're constantly looking for him to run the offense at a high level. And so the expectation is more than it was last year. Everything that he did last year was for the first time. This year we know what he can do, and so he's got to take those next steps. We talked before about just the physicality of standing in the pocket, being able to escape and make plays with his feet when that's appropriate. But he's got to be at his best on third down and in the red zone. And in 2 minutes, we know we're going to have to win games in the fourth quarter looking at our schedule. So we need him to be on his stuff when it comes to that. And, when you're young, typically what happens is we try to protect a young quarterback through running the ball, defense, and all that. Well, he's not young anymore, so now he's got to help some of those other guys around him to make everybody on the field better.
Joey up front.
We didn't see Austin or Phil out there at practice spots on Saturday. What's their status, and what do you think Ian and Carter did?
Yeah, it was good to see those guys get some reps and kind of get forced into it. And they'll be like that for the rest of the spring. Those guys had a small procedure, but they'll be out for the rest of the spring, but we'll be back for a full summer. But it's great to see both Ian and Carter have to step up in a big way. And again, it's one thing when you're the second guy, or maybe the third for Carter, but now he's getting reps with the ones who are going against the best guys over on the other side of the ball. So this is a great opportunity for him, and he's got to take it and run. But it's not just the physical part; it's the mental part, being able to do it and then consistently do it over and over again. So I think this happened a couple of years ago. I know it happened a couple of years ago in preseason camp. We had some guys out in the offensive line. Some guys had to step up, and that paid off dividends down the road. So we need those guys to finish with these 2 really good weeks of work, and they'll be right at the point of attack, and so they need to really step up for us, because that not only are they playing for depth, but they're playing for starting positions. And everything is on the board, and the more guys we have that can play, the more we're going to put them in the game. And we know it's a long season, as we talked about before. And playing multiple positions is important with the offensive line, but both of these guys right now are tackles, and then they need to step up in a big way. And Ian's into year 3, and then Carter's now into year 2, and so what an opportunity for him the next couple of weeks.
Bill Anderson, center.
Right. Continuing on the offensive line, I believe you guys have the most continuity in the country in terms of returning snaps from last year. It was the Power 4. As you assess the sport and understand more and more sort of the roster movement and things, how much value do you place on offensive line continuity? How does that influence whether or not you wanted to add to the portal this year?
Yeah, I think it's big when you have guys in your program for multiple years, and you know where they're at. Guys really take big jumps in the offensive line with just how things slow down, the overall maturity, the understanding of the game, the experience, and just physically just growing into their bodies. It's really the most developmental position, that in tight ends, that in my opinion, we have in college football. So when you see guys really step up and play really well in year 4 and 5, it's typically because of all those things, that the number of reps, the accumulation of these games starts to show up. Now, if we think that somebody athletically has tapped out and they can't get any better, that's another conversation. But the guys that we had coming back, we felt like they could continue to get better with these reps. And when you look at across the country, the trend in the last few years is when you have a veteran offensive line, typically, you're able to adjust things quickly, and guys are able to sustain throughout a season. So we're counting on these guys to continue to get better, but also having that experience count.
Steven Curran.
Kevin, I was about the special teams. First of all, what have been your impressions of Connor Hawkins through these first few practices, and also where you think the special teams operation is in general heading into the season?
Well, Joey comes back, and so we need that presence there. You know, we think that he gets the ball out quickly. He's solid. He needs to take the next step and continue to get a little more hang time and a little bit more, you know, depth in terms of his punting. But he gets it off quick, and you know, brings a veteran presence there. We have two guys that we brought in, Dalton and Connor, both older guys. Both have been through it before. Dalton older than Connor, but you know, both pros and how they approach the game. When we get around them, to see how very serious they are, and we're trying to put those guys in situations almost every day. Did it again today. Where we want to see those guys operate, because you know the games are going to come down to this, and you know we need these guys to step up in a big way. So Connor's somebody who's been clutch. We've seen that before. He was a Baylor, so he has experience making game-winning kicks and big kicks. So we know that's going to come up this season. And then when you look at Dalton, I think he's been the long snapper maybe for the last two Rose Award, either winners or finalists. You know, he is very consistent, and that's, you know, the operation of the snap and the hold is almost as important as the kick itself. So you know, all those things will come into play, and then we'll figure out the kickoff part as we get closer to preseason.
Firm on the right.
Ryan, last week in your press conference, I think you mentioned the word efficiency about 8 times, talking about the offense, but heading into this offseason, I know one of the other words was explosiveness that you were trying to get to. Heading into week 4 here of practice, have you seen the change that you wanted to see out of the offense? How much of that is structural? How much of that is just personnel? What are you seeing that give you confidence that you're getting that?
Well, I think I've seen some of it in the past game for sure. The run game, not as much. Legion's been out here for a couple of weeks. We're hoping that he can give us some explosive play. Bo and Isaiah both, you know, are out for the spring, and we really need those guys to get to the second level, make some people miss. You know, they did a nice job as freshmen, but they're not freshmen anymore. I wish they were practicing in the spring, but that is what it is. So I think we're going to continue to get them to the second level. They have to make people miss or run them over, and that's just the bottom line. And if we do that, we're going to be explosive, because then we're forcing guys to come down in the box, and then we can be explosive throwing the football. I think we do have depth at receiver. I think guys are working on run after the catch more than ever. I think Arthur's doing a really good job of trying to be creative about the formations and the way that we can attack teams. So that's been good. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, in the run game, getting guys to the safeties and second level and making those guys miss and running them over. So you know, we can certainly come up with creative plays to do that, but really it comes down to execution at the end of the day. And so we got to make sure that you know, we're continually trying to get our guys in the right position to be successful, but like we're getting better at the techniques it takes, because you know, it's usually not like this exotic play that creates the explosive. We have to be on schedule so that we can take our shots and be ahead of the chains, as we know. But it isn't always shots that creates the explosive plays. A lot of it is effort in the perimeter and blocking. So transitioning the run game, and that is another challenge for Cortez and the receivers, is, you know, getting to the second level and making those blocks, because that's what turns good plays into great plays. Whether it's in a pass where we can transition to make blocks, or whether we're blocking the second level in the run game, that's it. Everybody's got to be a part of it. But we're seeing some explosive plays, and that's important. So yeah, the combination of those two things are a focus.
Spencer on the right.
Ryan, last year Keita Curry led you guys in sacks. I don't know if anybody would say he's the best pass rusher on the team. He's definitely the most relentless. You know what you have with KJ, but guys like Zion and Epi and Quay, how do you know that those guys have that to replace what KJ gave you? But maybe you can't really describe it.
Well, yeah, I would describe him as just a motor. He had a motor, and he understood how to make plays. He's a football player. I remember when he was coming out, and GM for the Colts, Chris Ballard called me and said, "Man, have you seen this kid?" And he was right. He's a football player, and so yeah, we have to replace that. And it was his motor, but it was also just understanding his hands and everything about it. He was a good special teams player. So yeah, there's a lot of production there that we have to replace. We just go off of what we see in practice. There's good things that are going on. I do think, like, for those guys, they see Ian out there, they see Carter out there. I mean, they should be going after those guys, and it's a good opportunity for Carter and Ian to go against them and figure out where we're at. So every day is a competition. There's a winner and a loser, and you got to go back and get to work. I mean, that's the whole idea of iron sharpens iron, and these guys got to show up. They're all looking to earn spots, because you're exactly right. We need to replace all the stuff and certainly the production that Kate brought.
Doug in the center.
Ryan, you're talking about the opportunity that Ian and Carter have now. If one or both of those guys really show you something, could Austin and Phil and one of Ian or Carter start for you guys? Meaning, could one of those tackles bump inside the guard spot?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're gonna try to find the best five, and Josh Padilla is another one that has been out this spring. So, does he fit in? That's what we're trying to figure out. But yeah, absolutely. Because the good news about Austin is that he has flexibility right there. Yep. So we'll look at it. Josh has flexibility. So we'll try to find the best five, the best we can. And all we can do is just keep practicing every day and evaluate what we have.
Steve on the left.
Yeah, Coach, you're about halfway through spring practice. If you could maybe name one or two guys on each side of the ball that have kind of played their way.
No, you're going to get me in trouble.
I'm sorry.
Parents, agents, how come you didn't name my kid? Go ahead, what do you got?
Just anybody who surprised you, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
On both sides of the ball?
Yeah, one or two guys that have been consistent through 9 days, I
Yeah.
guess.
I would say jeez. I know when I say this, they're going to have terrible practice, but I do think that there's a consistent level right now, and it's not perfect at all. But bringing in Mason Williams and Hunter at tight ends, with Nate, they're not perfect at all, but they're grinding at it and they're working at it. And I think those guys at tight end have shown up, especially in the pass game. Just seeing them make a lot more plays maybe than we've seen in the past. So that has been a bright spot. On defense, Earl really, how do you replace Caleb Downs? You can't. But Earl has been doing a great job of really communicating back there. Jalen McClain has been doing a good job back there. So that's been exciting to watch. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that right now. We'll go from there.
Blake on the right.
Coach, you talked about the blueprint for development that you have here, but also making sure you have the right guys in the program from a culture perspective. What was about Cortez Hankton that drew you to him, and what were those conversations like?
Well, the first part was our guys knew of Cortez, and Jeremiah and Brandon both. I remembered him during the recruiting process. Reached out to a few different coaches, brought Cortez in, allowed him to meet with our wide receivers. Thought the synergy was good there, but other than that, it was his background of playing, coaching, Georgia and LSU. He's been around it. He's recruited at a high level. But when you get around him, you quickly understand he communicates very well. He's very intelligent and connects with his players. So I thought it was really exciting to get him into the program. He wanted to be here. He's got a lot of energy, and again, relates really well with our guys.
Andy on the left.
Wanted to ask about Devin McEwen, a guy who really stood out, I think, in the open practice. We watched, lost his black stripe afterward. What's he's been showing since his transfer from UTSA and that stuff up in competition? I
would say a veteran approach. Somebody who's coming in and prepared every day, but then has to go put it on the field and prove himself. This is a new, when you come in as a transfer, especially at Ohio State, you have to prove yourself, and that's part of the whole black stripe idea. But and it's good. I've been getting text messages from players, what do I need to do to get my black stripe off? So it's competitive, but Devin's somebody who was serious during the recruiting process when he was in the portal. Told us exactly what he wanted. We told him exactly what this was going to be, and we're seeing a lot of that happen now. I think he's understanding the terminology, how we do things, the speed of practice. Guys have different habits and different programs, but we think that he has a chance to have a really good year for us.
Tony on the left.
Regarding the linebackers, you're going to be the first team probably to ever replace 2 top 10 linebackers. You went to the portal to get older, but it seems like, would you agree that you're building some depth there, and it looks like a pretty deep group, and what have you seen so far?
Yeah, and that's without having Riley out there, so it is good. And I think when you look at the number of guys we lost on defense, I think we brought this up before, but then when you bring in Christian, you bring in James, you bring in some of these guys, the number of plays actually, we have some experience there, just not at Ohio State, which we all know that's important. But I think Christian and Peyton have both done a good job. TJ is stepping up in a big way. He's going to find himself playing a lot of football this year. He's knocking on the door every day. You're seeing Sincere and Garrett and all those guys. So and Riley hasn't been able to practice because of his shoulder. So. James is doing a really good job there. We're throwing a lot at them. Matt's still trying to figure out what they do best. I think we're about halfway through spring, so there's now more to evaluate. But you know, we know that there's a lot of production there that we have to replace.
How long do you think it'll take Riley to catch up, or for you guys to catch up with what Riley can do?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably need to figure that out. When you're not practicing, it's really hard. It's just, that's so frustrating. Same with the running backs and some of the other guys. It's just hard to get better if you're not practicing. It's not his fault. So, you know, we'll be in a race this summer to get him ready.
Adam on the right.
Quick sidebar, was there a review of the final play there, the touchdown to Jeremiah? What was the consensus there?
Yep, there was a review, and under further review, and it was, it came from a bunch of different angles. There was a lot of controversy. We actually asked who ultimately made the final decision. We did not get that disclosed to us. So we actually called the office to figure out who makes the decisions on instant replay. We never got anything back, so we were frustrated about that. But the call was overturned.
Does the offense, did they have to run
So
today?
they had to run today.
Yeah.
Yeah, under further review, it was overturned. So,
Did you run?
huh?
Did you run?
I did not run.
You know what, either way?
No, I didn't run. No.
When you look at your wide receiver room, Brock Boyd has stuck out a lot. He lost his flag stripe early on. You've seen a lot of great freshman receivers come through here and watch their growth. What is it that he's done in these few weeks of spring that really jumped out to you?
He's bringing a mature approach. He goes hard every play. He's very smart in how he gets open. He's a good route runner. He understands multiple positions and just plays fast every play. And, you know, just looks very confident in what he does. And he's a good example of people who prepare at a high level can play fast because they're anticipating as opposed to reacting. And he looks very decisive when he's out there, and then just has great natural ability to catch the ball. Very competitive, great mindset, fun to be around, great body language, all the above.
Stephon on the right.
You guys have a couple guys in this transfer class who aren't just, you know, one-year guys like Will or Quinchon were, like, when you look at this draft and Davison and Will Kesberg, you know, being prospects, just what do you think you guys can improve about the develop your mantra, not necessarily only applying to guys who recruited and started their careers here? Like, well, what do you think Davison and Will, you know, Kesberg can kind of add to what you guys are trying to sell as transfers?
Well, I think when you talk to guys like Davidson or Will, Quinchon, you know, guys who've been in the program for a year or two, they can kind of do the talking for you as opposed to a coach. You know, my son's being recruited by, you know, some of these schools, and I go on these visits, and I kind of tell our staff, all coaches sound the same. They say the same thing over and over again. I think the thing that's different about Ohio State is we have the testimony to actually back it up. And we have the statistics to back it up. When you talk about the winning record, you talk about the stability, you talk about the development of what goes on here. We're very proud to say that I think we major in developing the elite athlete and preparing them for what's next, not only on the field but in life, but on the field as well. And you know, maybe there's another team out there that has both coordinators who are former NFL head coaches. I don't think they do. And that's, you know, a tribute to Ross and our board to be able to go get the best people here and bring them in and pay them because they're pouring into our players. And so when you come into Ohio State, you're going to be surrounded by the best. You're going to be on the biggest stage. You're going to be surrounded by great people and then players with the same mindset. And I think that matters as well. If you want to know where you're going, just look around at who you're hanging with. And if you're trying to keep pace with these guys every day, it's only going to make you better. So guys like Davidson and Will who come in from other programs, you know, they just get a feel for that. And I love asking them. I think it's always a good question to ask some of the guys who come from different programs, even for you guys. So what's the difference between Ohio State and where you were? It's always good to get that feedback, you know, perspective back. But, you know, we're proud of that and how we set it up, and excited to see where those guys end up here in a couple weeks.
I guess to follow up on that real quick, like, when you're looking at guys in the portal, I know, you know, everything's so, you know, you're focused on the 2026 season, but do you look at the opportunities of having someone for multiple years and not just having a one-year transfer? Like, is that something you have to weigh when you go through that process?
Yeah, and it kind of depends sometimes on, all right, once this year's over, what does next year look like? And are we able to just bring in a one-year guy? Do we need a two-year guy? And then sometimes, you know, the two-year guys end up leaving after their first year, so you're never quite too sure. But yeah, we're trying to project 2 and 3 years out, which is not easy when you're plugging guys in. And then when there's a hole, it needs to get filled, and that typically is filled in the portal.
We're gonna have two more. Bill.
As you said, there's no replacing Kevin Bounds, but you brought in 2 veteran guys, Earl Moore you mentioned, and Terry Moore. Earl's obviously made an impact. What is it about him that has stood out to you, and where's Terry? I mean, obviously he had a knee injury last year. Where is he right now?
Yeah, no, having a a good start to spring, both of those guys. I'm really glad that we brought those guys in, you know, and talking about the culture and talking about making sure we have the right guys. You know, Earl was at Bama with those guys, with Caleb and with James and with Quay. And so he also grew up with Brandon and Jeremiah and those guys in South Florida. They knew of each other and you know, spent a lot of time together. So we knew what we were getting there. His dad is great. Then Terry, you know, he was with McElrary at Duke. So he knew exactly what we were getting there. So that's an important part of all of this, and we knew what type of players they were. And they've been assimilating really quickly, understand the defense. They're smart players, really good in space. You know, so we're excited. We're just getting started, but they're off to a great start.
Jeremiah was definitely out.
He was that?
Definitely out of Jeremiah.
Well, okay.
Austin on the right.
Ryan, when you mentioned the offensive line injuries and then Bo and Isaiah, you know, I think Turbo wasn't out there on Saturday, Legend. Has what you envisioned with you and Arthur Smith for the run game been compromised by the injuries in spring? I know that you're still a training camp down the road, but are you behind where you thought you'd be? What has been the real limitation?
Well, just getting those guys the reps of seeing the schemes and things like that. Obviously, the run checks by you know, the quarterbacks, you know, the blocking on the tight ends and the offensive line and the wide receivers. That's all getting done. You just would like to see, you know, more guys getting those reps and seeing the cuts and you know, because it's all timing and vision and all those things. So that's the only thing that, you know, we're obviously a little frustrated with. But the rest of the group is still getting the work done, and we'll make a lot of progress that way. Just would love to see everyone getting the reps. But hey, injuries are part of it. We'll get these guys healthy and quickly get them back on the field.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about the proposed draft of players, but I think it's still in this formative stage in your thinking. When you're out there watching a practice like Saturday, we got to stand right behind you on occasions. What are you watching? Are you watching James Smith occasionally flash and have a couple of big plays? I mean, where do your eyes go? And then follow up on that, I mean, James Smith obviously got his black stripe off. Is he ahead of schedule? I mean, obviously, he's from Alabama, et cetera. Just, what are your thoughts in those moments?
Well, my first thought is don't say what you want to say right now,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of people watching. We have students there, we have parents there, we have a lot of people, a lot of eyeballs on these guys, so I'm going to just refrain from saying what's actually on my mind. I'm going to take a deep breath. And so we just sort of let the guys play because there's a lot of eyeballs on that day. And what am I looking at? You know, I'm obviously watching the operation, I'm always watching the quarterback, but, you know, just trying to make sure everybody's staying up, making sure that when it's a live period or tackling, you know, that when we transition to a thud period, guys are thudding, making sure that there's nothing going on, guys are staying away from the quarterback. Just in that moment with all those people there, I'm just trying to make sure that everybody's getting organized and we're getting the practice done correctly, and then get on the film and start doing, you know, the rest of it. But I like those type of days. I like those types of environments because, you know, we have to go play, and there's a lot of guys watching them, and emotions get high. It's very, very competitive, and so you get a chance to see also when we're just calling the stuff, who really knows what's going on, as opposed to reading a script and having an idea before you walk out there what exactly is going to get called.
And James, is he coming?
Yeah, so James has flashed. I think the biggest thing that Coach Jay is challenging James with is you know, being able to sustain a high level of play for a long period of time, being disciplined in the defense. The plays will come to him, but you can see the talent, you can see how much he loves to play. I'm glad he's a Buckeye.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, guys, thanks.